What the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
Talking about the Sandman today. We all finally got around to watching it.
They did.
Yeah, you're on top of your shit. Hey, listen, man. I fucking put in work last week. I talked about it. Okay, give me a little bit of give me a little credit.
No.
But the Sandman. They said it was unfilmable, Marvin.
What does that even mean?
Well, since like the 80s. Many people tried to adapt this into a movie.
No shit.
Yeah. Many tried, many have given up.
It's because they tried to put it into a movie.
Yeah, that's always been one of the, I guess, common complaints. Not complaints, but is that this requires a level of technology that didn't exist at the time, first of all,
right.
And also like a medium that didn't exist at the time. So what better place to portray an expansive and wildly creative universe than on a Netflix type of service, in this case, actual Netflix.
Your waking world is shaped by dreams. Dreams and nightmares that I create.
This fucking show was great. I was gonna say I haven't read any of the comics at all. Not surprising to anyone, but coming in fresh, I was like immediately fully invested into the show, like fully immersed. I think I didn't have any type of issues getting lost, like with the story or anything. It just felt natural. Like they did a great job, I think.
Yeah, I didn't actually read the books either. I had like very limited knowledge of the character himself, just from being into comics. But I've never actually read them. Dusty, did you read them? Because you've got more history with comics.
No, not too much. I have a couple of the books. If you forget which ones, I'd have to go look in my long box. But no, I'd never really delved into the Sandman stories too much.
But in the comic books, it's very closely tied to the DC universe, and there's a lot of characters. Superman shows up in certain books. Batman. The character in the show, John D. In the comic book, he's actually Dr. Destiny, which is a like D-lister Justice League villain. But this
they keep it loosely tied to the DC, but not like canon tied per se.
Right,
that makes sense. Like stories take place,
and the big one is John Constantine from Hellblazer series. In this case, we have Joanna Constantine because DC, I guess.
Abrams' dick.
Yeah. Well, also, too, so, like, this is actually Neil Gaiman's property. He owns it. While it was, I think he renegotiated his contract some years back. So he owns the stuff. That's why he was able to do things like, I don't know if it's so much to do with, I know you reported on that in our news segments over on the podcast. Go check that out on Spotify or Apple. But I feel like it might have had something to do with DC because he owns this character and these guys, but didn't have the rights to use other DC properties like Dr. Destiny, like John Constantine, stuff like that.
That sucks because as a new fan, it feels like they should be focusing on this type of show where they could bring in and make this big universe that they're trying to establish.
Well, I mean, listen, we covered, it seems like every fucking week we're talking about DC and some fucking bonehead thing going on over there. So
yeah, right.
If they don't have, I mean, listen, this is one of the most famous graphic novels of all time. It's up there with The Dark Knight Returns, The Watchmen. Very, very popular.
Not surprised at all. This has inspired me to start reading these books.
Try telling you, Marvin. Yeah. Comic books?
I got them on my tablet right now. I'm ready.
Comic books are some of the greatest stories ever told. People dismiss the medium because it's a comic book. What are you, a fucking kid? It's like how video games used to be. You play video games, you're a fucking nerd. You live in your mom's basement. It's like, no, man, it's just a great medium for storytelling.
Yeah.
And this is the story of the King of Dreams. He goes by many names. Morpheus.
So many names.
Dream, the Sandman, and he is actually accidentally kidnapped by some rich dude who thinks he's a wizard.
Yeah.
And this rich,
Also from Game of Thrones. We've been
Well,
seeing a lot of these
Also from Game of Thrones,
actors
yep.
branching out. That's
how
pretty cool.
accidental is it?
well, he's trying to kidnap Death because his son died, and he wants to force Death to bring his son back.
Yeah.
Right.
Morpheus
and
so happens to
somebody
be his
gave
sibling.
him some sermon to spit out to capture Death, when in all actuality it was probably desire and
Yeah. Well, that's the ultimate thing. Is like desire, sort of like put all the chess pieces into place.
Put the
playing
piece-
chase.
Is the
yeah.
puppet master with the playing with the marionettes. So yeah, you're right. In that sense, it's not really that accidental. But Death is actually kidnapped. I'm sorry, Morpheus is kidnapped and kept imprisoned for 100 years. And while he's away, his realm, the dream realm, is collapsing without him there, as is the waking world. People,
Ooh.
there's a disease that's ripping through the world. They called the sleepy sickness.
Yes, that shit,
Pe-
man.
people
Which
not
one would
waking
you
up.
rather have, Dan?
I love
Sleeping
fucking
forever
Oh, yeah.
or
Yeah.
not being able to sleep?
No, I love sleeping. I could sleep for in real life now without any fantasy attached to it. I could sleep until I died. Like literally. I could. There's days where I wake up and I'm just like, I'm hungry and I gotta pee,
Jesus
but
Christ.
I'm just gonna go back to sleep for a little bit. I love to
Hibernate.
fucking sleep, dude. Yeah, I wish
I love
humans
to sleep,
hibernated.
too.
I wish.
Oh man, that would be crazy.
Um,
Like hibernated like bears, like where you eat a bunch and clog up your butthole, or
yeah,
like
for like
just-
6 months. Just
Yeah.
sleep. But Dream eventually escapes his confines, and he has to regain some items that have been stolen from him to get back his full power, and he has to clean up his house a little bit. His shit's falling apart, so he's got to get his shit in order. But the main story is really about Dream basically learning about change.
yeah,
And I know that's one of the centerpieces.
kind of like losing and finding himself, right? Like
yeah,
he goes through that.
yeah. And as we said, we haven't read the comic book, so please, fanboys, forgive us if we fuck something up. You could always leave a comment below and let us know what we're messing up. But we're reviewing the show, not the comic book itself. So as the show portrayed, the way I took it was, this is him learning about change through the human experience, right?
I think it's pretty accurate.
And underneath all of this is really the story about humans, presented through this very fantastical tale of the endless and biblical characters and all this fantasy and lore and stuff like that. It really is a story about humans and about how fragile our existence is, and that we may want to stop from time to time and take a step back and just appreciate that we exist at all. Sort of how I took it by the end of this. The plot sort of meanders through where the first episode is actually, it's really just a setup for like where we are, who's this main character, what are we going to be dealing with, what are we going to be experiencing. And I thought it was actually a pretty bold choice for a first episode, because you have your main character who literally doesn't say a word for the entire episode.
Right.
And it's me personally, I think I said this to you while you were watching it. You were like, holy shit, that episode was great. And I was like, well, actually, I think the first episode's the weakest of all of them, so you're in for a real fucking treat if you like this one.
Yeah.
So far. But, had a lot of work to do in the first episode, and I do think they pulled it off. They set it up very nicely. And then a lot of the rest of the series is essentially a series of short stories.
Right. Yeah.
Here
With
and
an
there.
overarching main theme.
Yeah.
At some point, it's like the plot evolves a couple of times
Mhm.
to where you find out about the vortex, and then the vortex becomes the main plot for
Right.
the rest of the show.
Right.
I think this show, the first episode was great for me too. I think
Mhm.
each episode after that was really good up until my favorite episode, which is episode 5, 24/7, which is what I told you guys.
Mhm.
And then I think after that, there wasn't a better episode, but they were all still really good episodes. But I think 24/7 was probably my favorite episode.
24/7 was great, but since we're talking about it, my favorite episode was episode 6, which was The Sound of Her Wings, where we meet Death. And
That was a great episode.
And he basically spends a day with her, and she's going around collecting souls. And
Yeah,
I know this was from the comic book. There's a moment in that show. They handled this like actually pretty beautifully. Like I thought, you know, it could have been done like much darker, but like the way the what they're presenting is like, again, like, you know, appreciate the life that you have while you have it, because it could be taken away at any time, as we see with
like that.
a young fucking fit sports guy, a baby.
Oh man, yeah. The baby was, oh my God.
Yeah.
But even the sports guy, like he was literally on his honeymoon with his wife. He's like, my wife's right there. Just let me talk to her for a second. I need to give her my flight information.
I meant the soccer player who got hit by a car.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably say the last one, actually. I thought it was a pretty compelling story. I like the way that they ended, and it made you want to know. You're like, okay, so this is what happened to him. This is how he got here. This is what he's doing, and this is his world. What's next? Like, I thought it was pretty good setup for the universe. So yeah, like
You're talking about the last one with the cat and the author, or the last one?
No,
not
the
11th?
special, not the special episode that they aired.
Did you guys watch the episode 11, the one they dropped like a week or so after the fact?
Yes, sir.
Because that Calliope story was also really good.
It was so good. It was actually like eerily similar to the first episode. Like the setup where he brings the thing and he gets it. Yeah. I think that was like super well done.
Yeah, so there's so much stuff that I could say, like, oh, I like that. As we're talking, I'm thinking about it. Like,
it's a lot of shit. Like like when you found out Fiddler's Green is a place in the dreaming and not a person, and
another big one for me.
Go ahead.
Not really shocking or surprising or any of that stuff, but just the sheer creativity of it was the serial killer convention.
Oh man.
Like, and that's one thing that really stood out to me to this show is just the sheer creativity of Neil Gaiman to craft like such an intricate and intertwined world and all these stories, and like pulling elements of like all different types of fantasy and like religious elements in it that aren't even religious for the purpose of this story, but they're just, the figures are there, like Lucifer Morningstar and Cain and Abel, and like this, as I said, this is one of the most popular stories like almost ever, and it's getting like very good fanfare. It's getting good reviews from people who aren't familiar with the source material, and also what a testament to Neil Gaiman's work that this shit has existed for like 30 years. And
still holding steady, dude.
The thing that surprises me the most is that in like none of these concepts, at least to my knowledge, has ever been done in any other medium other than his stories. It's like I'd be hard pressed to find another story similar to this in any way, and there's a ton of fantasy out there. There's a movie that I was reminded of was What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. Specifically in the episode where he goes to hell. But that's not because it's similar to Neil Gaiman's story. It's similar because both Neil Gaiman and What Dreams May Come took their inspiration for the hell and the hierarchy of hell from Dante's Inferno in the Divine Comedy. But I just thought it was like, I don't know. I just found it amazing. Like, these stories are just so unique and so creative.
Really are. So many, like, they just set up the world so perfectly.
Yeah.
Not even just the main story or the story of Dream, but like they double back at the end, and we got some insight of what might happen with Lucifer.
Yeah.
Like talking about invading Earth, and then possibly, I forgot how she referred to it as, but it implies invading heaven at some point. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be fucking nuts.
What do they call it?
I forgot what she called it. What
something
she
of light, the throne of light, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of your episode, the one that you like, 24/7. there's another thing I wanted to touch on too is like how many different genres this show in just one season sort of explored. Like you got fantasy, you got drama, you got some comedy here and there,
Right.
and a straight up horror episode in 24/7.
Oh man, yeah.
But from what I understand from reading reviews from fans and people I know who have read it, like you basically don't get a better adaptation than what this gave you for anything really. Like they say, a lot of people have said this is like a lot of stuff is just straight off the page.
I mean, that's something you kind of expect when you get the creator involved in the project of,
Mhm.
transferring mediums. You go from book to film.
Right.
If they're involved, you're hoping that they're going to be true to the story. Kind of like what George R.R. did for
Yeah.
Mm,
Game of Thrones until he ran out of material and they got ahead of him. But
right.
Naturally, when you're adapting something that's so expansive, there's bound to be some things that you leave out and miss and skip, and you have to like change it a little bit to fit the medium that you're working on. And I from what I hear, there's a little bit of that stuff, but it never actually like ruins the story overall.
Okay.
And there are people though, Marvin, don't you know it? Those fucking
Don't say it. Don't say
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're out there. I read a review before we started doing this on IMDb. Bait and switch.
oh boy,
They suck you in by using a known franchise. It's a popular tactic nowadays, and then they completely demolish it. Constantine, for example, morphed into a female who was a lesbian. Yep, it's just like that. There's more that I could read, but
Jesus Christ.
yeah,
we've gone over this I think 3 times now.
This is great.
I'm sick of talking about it.
It's a dude's fault that John Constantine is not in this movie.
Let him
because
know, Dusty. Tell him
he owned
again.
the fucking rights and he didn't want to fucking give them up.
Greedy
Even-
men. You hear that?
Well,
Greedy ass men.
Even still, though, having some familiarity with Constantine, mostly from the Keanu Reeves film, I don't think that character was like poorly showcased at all. Like I didn't even think twice that it was a female. I was like, oh yeah, this is Constantine. Who cares? And another one that I think people are, a little bit up in arms about, and maybe this is a valid one, but the character of Death in the comic book is a white female. And the fact that she's actually white is a big part of her like she's very pale, and she almost spawned like the female gothic fashion trend of the time.
No shit.
So I think the fact that she was race swapped annoys people a little bit.
Race swapped.
But I'm sitting here and I'm like, who fucking cares? It's an imaginary character, and the actor
gives a
who
fuck?
did it is fucking brilliant as the character.
That. Yeah.
So who
That was
fucking
so,
cares?
like,
So I don't know. I'll never be able to understand this stuff. I mean, in some cases, I think like, gender swapping and race swapping is just like pandering. In this case, I didn't feel that way at all. I think they just went out and got good actors to portray the characters well. And that's what's important.
Right. But it's hard to delineate that stuff sometimes when you're talking about, whether or not a movie production company or a director or producer is going to say, hey, this person is going to bring this thing to this character and it's going to make it great, versus though we need a minority woman in this role.
Yeah, they hit
'cause
check
that's the
boxes.
message we want to send.
Need a minority.
There's different ways, that you can approach it, and
Sure.
it's hard to tell sometimes what the reason is for it, because it can be done tastefully and properly.
Sure.
And people who are fanatics of this content are obviously going to have a little bit of resentment about it not being true to the source, but people who really enjoy the content are going to be able to get over it and get past and say that was a good version of that character, even though it wasn't true to the original.
Well said.
Yeah.
Speaking of actors and characters, let's go through some of the main people in this. We have Tom Sturridge as Dream. I thought he was pretty good. And again, from what I hear from people who have read it, he was like fucking literally like ripped off the page in terms of the way he
He's
looked
good.
and acted. Boyd Holbrook playing the Corinthian, he was fucking great.
Oh my god, he was so good too.
Um,
He was giving me real like fucking like Agent Smith vibes,
Yeah.
dude. Like he was a virus,
Yeah.
almost.
But the standout for me is a huge cast. Vivian Achiampong. I don't know if I'm probably not pronouncing that right, so I apologize. She's Lucienne, his book,
Ooh.
the librarian. She was great.
Super good.
Patton Oswalt was Matthew the Raven. I thought he was funny. Just being Patton
Yeah,
Oswalt.
of course.
We mentioned the actress who played Death. Fantastic work. The standout for me.
Oh, real quick, Dan. You know she was in Barry too.
Who?
The chick that played Death.
Oh,
she was in Barry.
Yeah, she was the
one of the actors.
The one yeah. The person that stood out to me though was David Thewlis, who played John D. That dude is so fucking good in like everything that he does. Such a like.
He's a great actor.
He just has this.
Really
he
good.
has such a like. I can't even think of how I'm trying to describe it. He has such like a calm way of being super fucking scary.
God,
And like everything he does, because he was
when he was in the car with that lady that was taking him.
Oh my God.
taking him around.
My
he
heart's
was
just
creeping
like,
her out so badly. She was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
Like,
but not just in this, like him just as a person. It's just how he is. Because he was the villain in I forget which season, but he was in one of the seasons of Fargo, maybe season 2. He was so fucking scary in that. It was like, imagine a whole season of like what he was in that episode 24/7. Fucking so good. But yeah, great cast.
Yeah, I love the cast.
I thought the show was great. Hope we get a season 2. I'll fucking jump at the opportunity to watch that. And it made me want to read the comics as well. You mentioned that you got them on your Kindle or whatever the fuck you use.
I'm pretty sure it's already renewed.
Probably. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet or not.
I would
but
hope
wouldn't
so.
doubt it.
That would be a big fucking letdown if it wasn't.
But I'm probably gonna buy the books. I want to. I would like to read them, and it'll be a nice change of pace going into like a second season, having some sort of like previous connection to a lot of these characters and stories. One of my buddies, who I mention all the time, is a big comic book fan. He was telling me all along, like, there's a lot of stuff that they like glanced at in this season that were huge stories in the actual comic book.
Ooh, that's exciting, actually.
Namely, he mentioned one, the African queen he talks to briefly in Hell.
Oh my God, that was insane.
Yeah, that apparently is like a very big story arc in the comic book. So there's plenty of stuff that they could explore for future seasons. And
that's crazy because they definitely glossed over that. And she was like, "I haven't seen you in 10,000 years" or something. It's like, and he was like a black dude or something instead of. It was crazy.
This is going to be one of those shows that might frustrate people too, because they could spend an entire season, like season 2 could
on
be
a side story,
a side story that hasn't and nothing.
I'm here for it, dude. I'm
they
so
get back
here for
to it. So, I mean, if they can get the cast involved and on long enough to,
that's the problem, right?
Be able to tell the whole thing in a good way, that'd be great. So, I hope they at least are plotting it out to end it, because anybody that goes into these projects that doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end plotted out generally destined for mediocrity or failure.
Right.
I do want to shout out the name because we didn't say it. The actress who plays Death is Kirby Howell Baptiste. So great job to her. She did it. She fucking knocked it out of the park. And she sort of like, as she did with, what was so great about her character, I don't mean to double back to that, but what was so great about her portrayal of Death is that she made me feel comfortable with Death as she was about the people who were dying.
Right.
And I really liked
the friendly face to be there for them.
And I really like the theme of the show because she felt that way, and Dream feels this way too, because he mentions it a couple times. Like, they don't exist to own these human emotions and control them. They exist because we have these emotions. Like, Dream exists because we dream. Desire exists because we have desires. And clearly his brother Desire doesn't see it that way. So we spent 30 minutes sucking this show's dick, rightfully so. One little gripe that I had with it, and I hope they change it for season 2, I did not like the way it was filmed at all.
Really?
Yeah, it was very.
Wait, what about it though?
Well, as soon as because Dusty
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
watched
Mhm.
he was with me when I started watching it, and there was like this stretchy, like vertical stretch to the shots, and like they did a lot of stuff with like depth of field, and it just felt like blurry. It just felt like watching something in like 480p a lot of the time.
Yeah, they used a
Hmm.
weird sized film, and then
Yeah.
like 40 millimeter, 17. I don't know.
It was something
Hmm.
done purposefully because in the comic
Yeah.
books, there's that layer of like, there's a blur between reality and dream.
Okay.
So
I see what you're saying.
they did it in the show to try to give this like extra layer of like,
They wanted to give it a visual effect.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
For me, it was just very visually jarring. And I didn't like that. That's the only thing that I didn't really like. Currently, the show, I mean, it's just one season, obviously, but it's on IMDb, 7.8, very, very high.
That seems low. 7.8.
That's in the high.
I'm a little sad about that.
It's in the upper echelon. I would give it about a 7.5 myself. I don't like the in between numbers. I'm a 7, 7.5, 8. Like when this is 7.8 shit.
Right.
All right, I'll round up. I'll give it an 8 because I don't want you to be mad at me.
Ah,
It was good. It was very good.
yeah, I
series.
would give this 8.
I've enjoyed it.
8.5.
And
I'm feeling it. I love this show.
before Dusty gives his rating, I just want to say one other thing. The other thing that was great about it was that if they don't renew this and it doesn't get a second season, they gave us enough where I would be satisfied with everything I saw.
You know, that is fair.
It had, like,
because
a
we do
decent
have the full
finality to it.
story that we could just go and read too.
But just in this,
So
just isolated to this one season, it had like a nice finality to it. It left enough for us to want more, but it also had enough to where it was like, okay, I'm cool with that.
yeah.
So Dusty, give us your rating.
I'm just gonna give it a 7.5 for now. I'd probably give it an 8
Okay.
on bias if I was more familiar with the source material,
Fair.
and maybe that'll go up. But I think it was well directed. I thought the film was fine. The actors were great. I'm looking forward to where it goes from here, and hopefully my rating will go up some. But yeah, good, strong 7.5 for me.
By the way, that review I was reading earlier at the end says, "Take note, someone has hired a bunch of trolls who have created multiple accounts rating this at 10, hundreds upon hundreds of times to artificially inflate the ratings." So I don't know if
Stop
you guys
the count.
have you guys gotten your Netflix checks yet or no? Because I haven't gotten
Nope.
mine yet.
Let me check. I'll have to check.
All right, yeah, let me know if you get that because I'll have to call our representative over at Netflix.
I'd only get a Netflix check if I sued Netflix.
That's fair.
Oh my god.
But there you have it, folks. There's our review for the Sandman Season 1. Let us know in the comments below what you thought. Please subscribe if you have not already. And if you want to get in further contact with us or take a look at some of our past podcast episodes, check out our website, harshlanguage.tv, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Asta.